Hi, everyone. Thanks for being here with Kevin Roth. He's an internationally known musician who developed a musical meditation after a near-death-like experience in 2016. And what's really different about him is he blends this into his life coaching consulting. So that's pretty cool. Thanks for being here, Kevin. I'm really looking forward to hearing your story.
No, thanks for having me. Good to see you again.
If you can jump right into your experience, I know people would love to hear that. And then near the end, I'll ask you how people can reach out to you for help. And thank you for being here.
Okay. Well, back in 2015, I had had about a 42-year music career, which was pretty successful. And I had thought most of my life that if you got fame and fortune, you'd be happy, or if you found love, you'd be happy, and all kinds of things. But ever since I was a little kid, I sort of had this sort of a longing, some would call it sort of like a spiritual drive to kind of know what all this was about. Because I never felt like I belonged on this planet in a kind of a strange way. Not too strange, because a lot of people feel like that. So I had been searching for something a little deeper than what I had thought it was. And in thinking one day that I wanted to kind of really be spiritually enlightened, because I found out that fame and fortune and love and all this stuff doesn't really bring you happiness. I was out of the blue kind of diagnosed with stage 3 melanoma, totally out of the blue. And although they removed the two little small spots where they found it, they said that within a year it would probably come back and then I would be dead within 2 to 3 years. So I had to get really clear on what life was about, what I was all about, who I was, and what mattered to me. So I spent a year waiting to see if this melanoma would return, which I strongly believe was brought on by stress. And that's actually pretty well known now in the medical field how stress really affects the human body, the mind body connection. So after a year went by and I sort of did a spiritual and analytical nosedive down my own rabbit hole, I left Kansas City, Missouri, where all this was occurring at the time, and I decided I was going to move to California. I was going to move to San Diego, and I was going to create a life I loved. And on paper, it didn't make any sense because it's very expensive to live in San Diego. And being a musician, especially during these times when musicians are not making a lot of money, it was like, how am I going to do it? But I believed strongly in my gut, and my gut said to go. And it worked out beautifully. And then about 2 years after being in San Diego, someone asked me, well, why don't you teach people what you did to survive the cancer without any medication? You know, I did it my way. I don't say that my way is everybody's way, but what I did to go from basically surviving to thriving. So I began to think about it because I didn't really know exactly what I did because I never thought of writing it down. But one of the things I did was to play this instrument above me called the dulcimer in a type of a meditation every morning, very softly, very simply, and did a lot of inner reflection. So the music sort of was sort of like a cushion or a background to giving me clarity and took a lot of stress down. And I always tell people, you know, when you play a musical instrument, you have to retune it throughout the day because temperature changes, playing stretches the strings. But we as human beings have to retune ourselves. So I do this thing called dulcimeditation, which I also teach to certain clients who play dulcimer, or if you play guitar, it works on that too, to kind of help rebalance their life. And then I figured out the philosophy I was using to keep myself positive and to get rid of stress and to follow my gut and create a life I love. And I began to do life coaching. Sort of fell into my lap, and then I became successful at it. Eventually, I started to work with medical doctors, clergy, psychologists, and a lot of people sort of in the midlife area where they're reassessing and reevaluating their life. So that's what I do now is I help people understand the direction of their life and what direction to take without fear or stress.
I love that. Thank you. What I'm thinking of doing today is maybe we'll do a part two where you can give us a couple minutes of a de-stress or however long you want so we can hear the beautiful dulcimer. But I do have a few questions. And I wanted to ask you if you could tell us a little bit more about your story, the transformational experience, some people call it, or maybe a near-death like experience, because you were given almost a death sentence of cancer. And but I also want people to know that whatever you say right now, I'm going to put in the description. So if you use that little arrow, you're going to find out how to reach Kevin for help and advice and how to reach me. The reason I do these interviews is to help people with anxiety, fear, doom, and gloom, which I had for almost 2 years. That's why I do these interviews, because people like Kevin really helped me when I listened to his stories. And if you can tell us how you help us, how we can reach you, and then a little more of your story.
Well, I had prior to this throughout my life what I call sort of out of body experiences, in the sense that I could see kind of visions of my future. It was kind of strange, but when I was 8 years old, I knew that I would be a musician. It wasn't until 13 that I saw the dulcimer. And I always wondered why the moon wasn't falling into the earth and all of these other things when most kids my age were playing sports or other things. I was always, what is going on? And I remember very, very clearly, and in fact, I validated this with my older sister, that I had a feeling that my life was going to end up being fairly well known as a musician. A lot of it would be quite difficult, but then towards the end, there would be spiritual knowledge, which would be incredibly enlightening and helpful, and would probably transform me into some sort of a teacher, although I didn't really grasp what that was, and had absolutely no interest in being any kind of teacher. And I don't consider myself a spiritual teacher. I just tell people my experience and what I do, and that works for other people, which I find amazing. I think it was because after I went through the whole musical thing of fame and fortune and being on TV and making albums and all of that, and becoming at one point pretty rich, and then losing it in the stock market with millions of other people, I realized that that wasn't what was going to do it for me, right? It wasn't going to give me peace of mind. And then I asked sort of the universe to be spiritually enlightened, because I was kind of at the ends of my rope. You know, I didn't know what I was going to do. It was a time when my father, who was my best friend, had just died. My 9-year relationship had ended, and a small little side business almost put me into bankruptcy. So I was pretty lost at the time, and I had no interest in going back into the music business at the time. So everything kind of hit, and I had a vision that I was living in Florida at the time, that I should go to Kansas, hang out with my sister, and it would be a respite. But I would also have a major medical issue that would be very serious, but would be okay. And I couldn't figure out, you know, when these out of body visions come, it's sort of like watching a movie or a preview of your life. It doesn't feel real and it doesn't feel unreal. Hundreds of thousands of people have them. More have near-death experiences. But you can't negate these visions. I call them out-of-body experiences because I don't feel myself in my body. I'm sort of nowhere. But these things sort of come to me. I also do it a lot when I coach. I look at people and I sort of look into them, not in a psychic way, but I kind of sense what's going on. They may say, well, you know, I'm happy to go to the market, and I can look at them and say, you're not at all happy going to the market. You know, so I have this sort of ability, which is probably why clients come to me or like my particular style. But this was very clear. And one of the weird things that happened was when I was in Kansas, Peter and Paul of Peter, Paul, and Mary showed up that first week I was there and gave a concert, and I knew Peter, Paul, and Mary. Mary had passed away, and Paul actually offered me a record deal, which I began to make while I was in Kansas. And then the diagnosis came in Kansas, and then I sort of just kind of had very, very strange mystical experiences. You know, I'm not a woo-woo guy. I believe there is something, but the secret is interesting to me. I don't buy it totally into it. I'm a skeptic. So I have to be really convinced that what I'm sensing and feeling isn't some woo-woo junk in my head, And these experiences I had absolutely were not. And I can tell you, and we'll talk more about it in the second part of this, that when you look back on your life, you see the reasons that things have happened in the correct order. Life isn't what we think it is. It's a pretty mystical experience. But my life has gotten way better, way happier. I'm really happy doing what I'm doing. So I mean, there's a lot more to the story. You know, when I got the melanoma, I wanted one doctor particularly, which I kind of vibed out, and he was unavailable. And I went to see other oncologists who my gut said absolutely don't listen to them. And I got forced into seeing this one woman because I needed to schedule tests. And I didn't like her at all. Didn't like her one bit. But on the way out at the reception desk was the card of the doctor I wanted. And I said, "Oh my God, does he work here?" And this receptionist said, "Yes." I said, "Well, I want to switch doctors." And with some convincing, she did. And Dr. Gower, was the only doctor that said, "I agree with you. Let's not do anything and see what happens in a year because there's no cure." Everyone else wanted to remove lymph nodes. They wanted to do protocol. My name isn't protocol. I have an identity. And I felt like I was in the cancer business. This guy was a godsend. So I teach people you need to follow your gut with life. And when it says go to California, but your mind says, yeah, but you don't have any money to go to, don't listen to it. If your gut says go, do it. If your gut says, I want to get a different job, I want to improve my relationship, I want to get out of a relationship, whatever your gut is telling you, that's your inner voice talking to you. You need to listen to it. And that's what I teach, is how to do that and how to balance that in a kind of a non-woo-woo way combined with science, because quantum physics tells you that none of this is real anyway. So that's kind of a short version of a long story.
All right, so let's get ready for part two. But to keep this brief, how do people reach you? What's your website? I know people are just going to love you. People who are meant to see you are going to see you, and they're going to want to bond and connect with you. So, do you want to give an email, a phone number, a website, and explain how that works?
Well, the easiest thing to do is my website, kevinroth.org. And on there's my whole story, all the endorsements from doctors and clergy and all that kind of stuff. But there's also in one of the links a course that or a link that will take you to a place where you can write to me. And if you're considering wanting to do coaching, you can fill out just some really quick questions, and then I'll respond to you. And then I do a free 30-minute thing if people want to connect with me to see if we're a match. And if that's not doable for people, then there's also a course I have on Teachable that people can purchase. And a lot of people purchase the course and then come to me. But there's a way to reach me. I don't work with everybody. I'm very selective because I take on clients like throughout the week. I don't know how to just separate at this point. I have a wonderful client. I just love her, love her, love her. And she's going through some major surgery this week. So she's in the back of my head and in my heart all week long. So I've learned to really limit and be sure that the vibe is right between me and the client. But they're great. They're like family. I call them my little sheep. They're fun. But that's how you can reach me, kevinroth.org. Also about the dulcimer. My music website's Kevin Roth Music, but you can find about what you need at kevinroth.org. And you can write to me, kevinroth.org@gmail.com.
Thank you for that. I really
You're
appreciate it.
welcome.
Okay.
Thanks for asking.
Yeah. So, for those who want part two, look for it. This channel is called Growth Factor. And again, the reason I do this for you and for me, for everyone listening, is helping you with anxiety, fear, doom, gloom, which manifests in a lot of ways: weight loss, smoking, to stop smoking if you want, test taking. A lot of children I know are struggling right now with anxiety. So that's why I do this channel. And if you have a story to tell, a spiritual woo type story, I'd love to interview you. So to reach me, it's growthfactor.org@gmail.com. That's how you reach me, through email. And again, I'll put that in the description. So thank
Yeah,
you so much, Kevin.
and
Yes, what else?
you do some really great interviews, which is why I'm really kind of honored to be with you. The one you did on my little buddy Ryan. I don't know him, But that really grabbed me, and so I suggest people, besides watching this, watch your other videos too. Real nice.
Yeah. Took Ryan and I, one day I'll tell the story, or maybe I told it in the interview. It took us 3 years to do that interview.
I know.
It's amazing how the higher power made us bump into each other one day in the middle of nowhere. And it was amazing how we got the message. We better do this. Thank you so much, Kevin. Thank you everyone for listening today. I know you just feel like you're part of hugging Kevin like I feel right now. You just said a bunch of things that I look forward to in part 2 that we can go over again, because you're very inspirational. You have a lot of little tidbits. It sounds like you almost accidentally say, it just comes out of you. So thank you for the lessons today.
You're welcome.